Hey, this is Theresa Matsura, and you're listening to Uncanny Japan. Today I'm going to do something a little different. Again, I'm going to give you some real yokai and paranormal news. Not current news, but stories that were actually published in newspapers during the late 1800s. And not tabloids either, but regular old newspapers. And they are absolutely delightful to read. Would you like to explore the stranger, more obscure corners of Japanese culture? Dig a little deeper into superstitions, curious customs, and all those mysterious creatures that inhabit the land? If so, then this is the podcast for you. Uncanny Japan is where I, author Theresa Matsura, share all the fascinating tidbits I unearth while doing research for my writing. From the bizarre to the ghastly, and everything in between. I hope you enjoy the show. Before I tell you about a couple of these old articles I found and translated, a little history you might already know, but just in case. You'll sometimes hear the Edo era, 1603 to 1867, or 1868, referred to as the Golden Age of Yokai. It was a peaceful time, and many creatives blossomed. Let me give you some examples of things that were born or saw their heyday during the Edo era. Kabuki, No, and Bunraku theater, ukiyo-e woodblock printing, ikebana, the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and ink painting, and of course, literature. Speaking of literature, there was something called kibyoshi, or yellow-covered books, that came about during the Edo era. They were quite unique and should probably get an episode all to themselves. I think I keep saying that. But a bit about them. These yellow-covered booklets were small, pocket-sized, and featured woodblock printed illustrations, along with text. Some say they were the precursors to present-day manga. Kibyoshi were often satirical and humorous, and to tell these sensational stories, the authors and artists would often employ yokai and other mythical creatures as characters. The little books were cheap, fun, and sold like hotcakes. They no doubt helped spread the yokai love. Then there was the great Toriyama Sekien, who traveled around Japan, collected all sorts of mythical beasties and legends, then ended up cataloging over 200 of them in his woodblock printed books. Toriyama-sensei had only intended to make one book, the Illustrated Demon Horde's Night Parade, also called the Illustrated Night Parade of 100 Demons. But that first book sold so well, he made 3 more. He even invented some of his own yokai. You'll find a lot of the yokai you love today based on his artwork. So, there's another reason the Edo era garnered the title the Golden Age of Yokai. After the Edo era came the Meiji Jidai, from 1868 to 1912. This was considered the modern era. However, even though there were plenty of developments in science, technology, and medicine, all those creatures and spirits, yokai and mysterious happenings didn't just disappear overnight. These otherworldly phenomenon continued to live in people's hearts, minds, imaginations, and homes long after this so-called modern era arrived. During the Meiji period, a new kind of newspaper was born too. But not all the news was, strictly speaking, factual. Alongside articles about upcoming events and tragic floods and fires, there were articles about incidents involving yokai and yurei, and other creepy and strange occurrences. It was during the Meiji era that newspapers began popping up all over Japan, big city ones as well as smaller local editions. As you can imagine, the smaller papers focused a lot on the local news that was collected and written by reporters who were residents of the town and reported what they heard. It wasn't their job to investigate the story, just write it. And this makes for some charming news articles. Let me share 3 with you today. The first one, dated Meiji year 18, which is 1885, August 27th, is a short article called "A Kappa Arrives in Tokyo by Boat." A kappa, measuring a little less than 1 meter, 3 feet tall, was captured in Sapporo, Hokkaido. It boarded a boat yesterday and arrived at the riverside of Fukugawa Saga Town. It is said to be 4 years old. The owner of the soba noodle shop Higashi ZUAN, in the same town the creature arrived, bought the kappa and is planning to show it in a misemono sideshow exhibit. The article gave no indication about whether the kappa was alive or not. The second story doesn't even have a date and is only a couple sentences long, but it had me asking so many questions I wanted to share. It's titled, "I'm a Messenger of a Tengu. Boku wa Tengu no Tsukai." The other day, a young boy was found standing in the pouring rain. He was, however, completely dry. When asked, he said he'd learned how to do this trick from a Tengu, and that he was a Tengu's messenger. That's it. That's the whole story. And why didn't the reporter ask more questions? Number 3 is a much longer piece from the Kainan newspaper in Osaka, Meiji era 18, January 8th. It's called "The Mysterious Tale of a Turtle," and sounds quite like a folktale, but it's not. Keep in mind, this is an actual newspaper article, although it starts poetically enough. According to a poem by Asami Oe, Urashima rescued a turtle and was rewarded with a wife. A similar or the same story can also be found in the Japanese Nihon Shoki, where, as witnessed by the people of the Yosha district in Tamba province, a fisherman named Urashimako rescued a large turtle, and in return, he was introduced to a beautiful woman. Together they entered the sea and sailed to the faraway mythical island of Horai, where they enjoyed the rest of their long days in utmost pleasure, listening to the beautiful music of the immortals. This century-old moss-covered tale will forever remain a mystery to us. Did it really happen? Was it all made up? But keeping in mind that turtles and tortoises can live to be hundreds of years old, surely it is plausible, for they have seen and experienced many things we can't imagine. A sea turtle can, as the following account suggests, give its grace to another, thus extending their life. In Osaka, in the Higashi Ward, there is a second-hand clothing store owned by a man named Osata Yohei. As an adult, Mr. Osata Yohei is a fine and respectable person, admired by many. When he was young, though, Yohei had a strange inclination for turtles. Whenever he found a turtle for sale, he just had to buy it. But he rarely kept them, and instead delighted in releasing them either in the pond at Tennoji Temple or into the moat at Nijo Castle. The exact number of turtles he set free is unknown. Now as an adult, we find that Yohei has one older, 18-year-old son named Yogoro from his first wife. He lives with his second wife together with their 2 children. The older daughter, Osame, who turned 14 this year, and a son, Yojiro, who is 11. The wife, it is reported, held great hatred toward the first son, Yogoro, and treated him very badly. Yogoro was very kind-hearted, though, echoing the character of his father, and continued to treat her as a real mother, never acting out toward her or being mean in any way. One day the second mother schemed to leave the entire business and estate of her husband, Yohei, to her son, Yojiro, the one who just turned 11. Still she worried, because Yogoro was older and might, under some loophole, inherit it all because he is her husband's oldest son. This possibility kept her targeting poor Yogoro and making his life miserable. Over time, Yogoro, having nowhere to channel his hurt and sadness, began participating in some illicit behavior. This involved occasional visits to the red light district in town. Sometimes he even stole a little money from the shop to pay for these excursions. In time, his second mother found out about these indiscretions and got very angry, telling her husband, Yohei, about his son's actions. Yohei was distraught and went to relatives for advice. Not understanding the situation at home between the boy and his mother-in-law, they told him to punish Yogoro, which he did by scolding him harshly. Now Yogoro had nowhere to turn and was deeply depressed. One day, he wandered the streets trying to find a solution to his problem, but he could think of nothing. Before he knew it, dusk turned to dark and the moon rose. Sometime around 10 p.m., he found himself near Nijo Castle, and he stopped. Yogoro looked down at the deep blue moat surrounding the high stone walls that shone eerily in the moonlight. He knew what he had to do. If he took his own life, then his stepmother would be confident that her own son, Yojiro, would inherit all his father's wealth, and that would make her a happy person. Her being happy would be better for everyone. It was his only choice. Yogoro had heard rumors about this particular moat. It was shaped like a mortar, meaning those who fell or leapt in would be unable to climb back out the steep sides and would invariably drown. This was the perfect place to end his life, he decided. Yogoro turned to face home and put his hands together in prayer. He apologized to his family for all his acts of disobedience. Then, when there was no one walking nearby, he jumped into the water. He felt his spirit sink to the bottom of the moat, but something was floating there and lifted him to the surface again. It seemed to be saying, "Hurry and go ashore." After coming to the surface again, Yogoro saw that it was a very large turtle, no doubt older than he was. Was it one of the turtles his father had set free? With a renewed sense of life, the young man tried to climb the slippery stone walls. He saw the turtle disappear under the surface of the water just as a man from Awaza was passing by with a lantern, spotted him, and helped him out. The man who rescued Yogoro returned him to his home soaking wet and explained what he'd seen. Both his father and stepmother were in great shock. He explained everything, and even the part about the mysterious turtle that saved his life. His father completely forgot his anger at his son, and his stepmother was very much ashamed of her behavior, and showing real remorse, gave him a heartfelt apology. They were so grateful to the man who rescued Yogoro that they held a grand celebration for the entire town of Awaza, where he was from. Afterward, both Yogoro and his father talked often about that mysterious turtle, and could it have saved the youth's life, because Yohei as a child had saved its life. The end. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye. You've reached the end of the show, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate you listening and supporting us. Any subscribing, reviewing, and gushing to your friends, family, even random strangers really does help keep us going. If you have the means and you want to help a little more and get a little more, we are making extra content over on Patreon, all for only $5 a month. Or if you like to read horror, you might be interested in my Bram Stoker-nominated short story collection, The Carp-Faced Boy and Other Tales. 本当にありがとうございます. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you real soon.